I'm very, very happy to announce Shubha, who is going to give us her final insights of the day, actually of the 2 days. And she worked in an industry that I can actually relate myself a lot because I worked in e-commerce. She worked at Fanatics, which is not many Europeans know, but one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world. She worked at eBay, which of course we know, and Walmart, which is actually the largest company in the world right now. And she is chief AI officer right now of 2 AI startups, which I found very interesting. You know, she's splitting her time. She's going to talk about her portfolio career, which I think is something also relates to me. So with that, please join me in welcoming Shubha on stage.
The music, I was, warned of it, but actually experiencing it is a different moment in itself. So I just learned something important, that I am in between all of us and drinks. How did that happen? I want to be where the drinks are now. Well, but before we get to the drinks, I just wanted to say what an incredible 2 days this has been, full of learning and connections. And if we can all just please give a big round of applause to all the organizers at PMF and TechX, Rafael, Adrian, Lulia, Hugo, I'm probably missing a few folks, and all the TechX crew. Thank you all so much for an incredible, incredible 2 days. And I think the applause speaks for itself. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what a champion's mindset is and how you can go from being wherever you are in your AI and generative AI journey, and you know, most of us feel like we're an underdog, right? To a most valuable player, a sports term that is used for the most valuable player in any seasons or tournaments. So we can learn from these champions in sports in terms of actually how to get there. Each one of us can do that. Let's take a quick poll. If I had to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not ready at all, and 10 being I am super ready, where are you in terms of having a plan for AI and generative AI in your life? Raise your hand if you're at an 8 plus. A few hands. I'm so proud of all of you. We saw about like 15 to 20 hands actually go up. Well, the goal of today's presentation, and for us, is for more hands to go up by the end of this talk. So wish me luck, and please listen up. Thank you, Rafael, for introducing me. I'm honored to be here. My most important role is that of a mom. Outside of being a mom, I have, I'm a product manager by trade. I've worked at a series of large and small companies, the larger ones being Walmart, eBay, and most recently at Fanatics, which is the world's largest digital sports platform. I learned a ton at Fanatics, and most importantly, what I learned is a new way of leadership and product management through an athlete's eyes. And I'm going to use a lot of those analogies here today. So I think it's going to be fun. I also have worked at startups, and so I was really happy to see Personino being, there's a keynote yesterday. One of the startups that I worked at IPO'd. It was called Upwork. It's a marketplace for freelancers, if you've heard about it. And then another IPO and another acquisition for a startup called Loop Commerce, which was acquired by Synchrony Bank, the world's largest retail credit bank. So as you can see, I've been around a bit in terms of big, small companies, etc. What I do currently is, as Rafael mentioned, I'm the Chief AI Officer and Product Advisor to 2 generative AI startups. I run what has now become a very popular generative AI hacks for improving your productivity. What started off as kind of like a personal experiment has become, and taken its own shape. I'm a product mentor and advisor to 2 startup accelerators where I work with a group of about half a dozen CEOs, advising them on everything product related. And I speak on AI and generative AI, and I also do a little bit of angel investing. I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but this is what is called a portfolio career. Many peers, like myself, who have spent some time doing product management, technology, whatever it might be, are going more towards the portfolio career approach because we want more flexibility in our lives. We want more control over the work that we do. And we want financial stability over the longer term. So this is an increasingly popular concept amongst some of my senior peers. And I'm very fortunate to be able to pursue that and to be here in front of all of you talking about AI and generative AI, my core areas of passion and expertise. So what is generative AI? It's pretty simple, right? I mean, this looks pretty simple, right? No, it doesn't look simple. Actually, jokes aside, Hendrik, who actually made this generative AI model, has a great YouTube video, which you should all probably see because it's an illustration of how this all comes together in terms of generative AI. It's all around us. We should know a little bit more about it. So here's a more simplified version of what is generative AI. And I get this question a lot, which is what is the connection and the relationship between AI and generative AI? And what is also, kind of like a simple architecture for what generative AI is. So on the left side, we'll go through what the connection is between the various terms and terminologies that we have. This is probably in the whole presentation the only technical slide, so let's humor each other for like the next 30 seconds, if you may. AI is a set of interoperable systems, a set of technologies that are based to connect together to be able to mimic human behavior in many different ways. An example is like IBM Watson. The interoperability of all of those systems makes it possible to build applications on top that mimic various types of human behavior. A subset of AI is machine learning. Machine learning is specifically a set of decisions, pattern recognitions, etc., based on data that actually gives us greater information about the decisions and patterns based on the data that you actually feed it. For example, your Netflix personalization and/or recommendation engine is a classic example of that. A subset of that is deep learning. Deep learning utilizes very advanced technologies like neural networks, goes through multiple layers of data, hence called deep, and solves very complex problems, like Google DeepMind AlphaGo that actually has mastered the very complex game of Go. And generative AI is a science within these and leverages all of these technologies, which basically takes prompts and translates that into human-like output in a series of modals. So when you now shift to the right, it's basically the foundation of generative AI is large language models that again take an enormous amount of data that is trained, that is built on a certain set of infrastructure. The input is a prompt and the output is a set of content. It could be images, text, voice, audio, possibly more formats and modals to come. So that's what is generative AI. Now, generative AI is pretty huge. And now that you know a little bit more about this, let's talk about kind of what the implications of that are. It's pretty huge. Many tech CEOs across the board have talked about the power of generative AI, the transformative power. Andy Jassy said this could transform every customer experience that is on our site. I mean, think about it, everything, not just customer service. And he's not alone. There are many tech CEOs that actually have talked about the transformative power of generative AI. And if I quote everybody here, I don't think I would have enough space. The proof, though, is in the pudding. Do we all remember what happened in early 2023? ChatGPT was the fastest app in the whole world at any point of time to reach 1 million users. Now, if we think Facebook, Netflix, and Instagram had great product-led growth, ChatGPT had 15 to 20x that. It reached 1 million users in 5 days, adding 200,000 users per day. It still has about 220 to 230 active weekly users and still does not have a CMO. They don't do any active marketing around this. So what does that mean? That means a great product, leads to great product-led growth. But also, the power of generative AI was unleashed to the world, and it really ended up satiating the curiosity of so many people in the world, like you and me, that wanted answers and had questions. Um, so, but that means everything should be great, right? And actually, the challenge is that everything is not so great in the generative AI world, and we have to recognize its challenges. The first challenge is that close to every project that we do on AI and generative AI will probably fail. And that is because generative AI is a new technology, and the first output of any of the first experiment of generative AI is just simply not ready for human consumption or commercialization, and it has to be iterated on. So tomorrow, if you're planning to start an experiment with generative AI, chances are it will fail. That can be pretty motivating, right? To start off on it. The second problem is that there are hallucinations, confabulations. These are challenges to building trust. A lot of us, many of the companies are actually focused on how to rag and fine tune these hallucinations and confabulations, which is a great thing. But 80, 90% of the models are still stuck in the left side of the spectrum, which is low model adaptation, meaning you take a generative AI model and you are basically using it for low value use cases. You're not really adapting it to any high value use case. A typical example of this is using generative AI to have a more intelligent chatbot or customer service, for instance, which already has a lot of AI embedded in it. So there are challenges, as you can see. There are also ominous predictions. I think Hugo mentioned this morning too. The entire product operating stack might actually collapse. It might just be one person with a series of co-pilots and agents doing product work and project work. That this might be a completely new world that we all actually live in. And many people are actually concerned about this model and what that means to them and their jobs and their work, and there are lots of questions from it. So yes, generative AI, even though it has fantastic promise and possibilities and potential, is not without its challenges. So what do? Do we give up? Do we say, you know what, it's just too difficult? I'm going to sit back on these lovely seats. These seats are so comfortable, by the way. I'm going to just sit back and allow the tide to just run through, and you know what, I'll be swept away by the tide, but I'll probably have a lot of people swept away with me. Maybe it's okay. I want to come here and tell you no. Your tide is for you to create. You can scale the peak of AI and generative AI, whatever your peak may be. Success is not a straight line, but I'm here to tell you that if we adopt a champion's mindset, we can scale that peak, your peak of generative AI, which is uniquely yours, and you will achieve the success that you want, again, which is uniquely yours. This was me last year, and it's kind of serendipitous that I'm here right now because I was in a very different place last year. I had a bad fall, bad accident, a surgery that became very complicated, and a doctor's diagnosis that said I basically may not be able to ever walk properly again. So I was feeling very low, as you can imagine. I was feeling stuck, physically, obviously, but also personally and professionally. I'm sure many of you could probably relate to this. We all have situations where we feel low, when we feel stuck, when we feel like just nothing is moving forward. And I empathize with you because I was there. I was literally there just a year ago. If I am here standing before all of you today, it is because of two reasons. The first is I was able to transform my life and my career to that portfolio of high-value AI and generative AI work in my hand. And then the second is I had a community that supported me, lifted me, inspired me on this journey. So I'm here to tell you that if I can do it, you can too. And I'm a product manager by trade. As I said, I love frameworks. What do I do? And my framework for your AI transformational journey is what I call my 3x3 framework. It starts off with three things. The first is come off the bench. This is a key thing where athletes go through sitting on the bench, but it's a key thing in terms of like getting up there and getting that first move out. The second is getting your first win, which is so important to build momentum. The third is playing the long game, playing for the future, playing for sustenance and sustained momentum. And we do this in three different ways. The first is we adapt creatively. And why is this important? Well, generative AI is an extremely flexible and evolving field. What was 6 months ago is not here right now. And we're right now sitting in a multi-agent kind of like a model architecture, and there is more to come in terms of innovation. So it's evolving. So it's important to keep adapting to that. The second is developing resilience. Did I say that most AI experiments fail? So it's important to learn from those failures and develop the resilience to not give up. The third is building community. Of course, we can do it on our own, but wouldn't it be more fun and more nicer to just do it with a community of people like yourself to be able to believe in and actually give back and do it authentically in a way that is natural to you? The beauty about this framework, this 3x3 framework, is that you can apply it to learning anything, to become an expert in anything, not just generative AI. It happens to be my framework for getting up and having that portfolio of work of AI and generative AI, which I hope is inspiring and educational for all of you. So let's talk about the first one, coming off the bench. You know, when you're bedridden with your leg up, you don't have the motivation, or at least I did not, to be able to, get off the bench. There were so many reasons to not get off the bench. And I knew that coming off the bench for me meant I just wanted to learn more about generative AI. I wanted to learn what this technology was about, what it did, what the potential was that everybody was speaking about. I just wanted to learn about it, but I did not have much motivation to do that. I had all the reasons to just not get off the bench. Well, first of all, the technology was new. It was only about 6 to 7 months in the game. And there weren't many institutional kind of like research to be able to really learn about generative AI. So, I could just give up and say, hey, let me try and just watch another movie instead, for instance. But it was important to come off the bench to be able to get to that level of work, that long-term work for AI and generative AI. So coming off the bench is a key first step. And what I learned in this process is, I asked myself a lot of questions, and I'm sure this will resonate with you. It is hard to start something new, right? Because we have so many, as I mentioned, reasons to actually not come off the bench and not start something, because status quo is easier. It's more comfortable for all of us. Doing something new means pushing into some unexpected and unknown boundaries and territories. And it feels scary. It might not yield the kind of results that we needed. So our efforts might be wasted. So really, why do it? So there are lots of reasons that life will give you in terms of not getting off the bench. But here is an important question to kind of ponder on, which will then follow into kind of what I did to be able to really get off the bench. When I think about sports, one of my favorite athletes is Serena Williams. I'm sure all of us hopefully have heard of her. We're, by the way, a huge tennis family, so you'll see some tennis, analogies here. But I think Serena's, kind of getting off the bench story is very inspiring for me. She grew up in Compton in the suburbs of LA with little to no resources. Tennis was still relatively a kind of like a rich person's sport. So the lack of resources, the lack of opportunities, there were so many false starts in terms of what she had. So for her to really come off the bench was a true superhuman effort. So when I look at examples like that, what I take away from this is the first thing is in my generative AI journey is to adopt a beginner's mindset. Archana spoke about this morning so eloquently. And as I mentioned, I like to read and I like to learn by reading. I love books, I love institutional reports, etc. And as I mentioned, generative AI is so new that it did not have institutional reports. What it did have was a product like ChatGPT that you could go and tinker with. So that was a new way of learning for me. I had to unlearn my way of how I learned about new technologies, new products, and actually had to relearn the fact that I have to build up my own knowledge by playing with this on my own and triaging this with whatever little institutional knowledge that was there for me to be able to understand this technology, which was very different and new for me, as you can imagine. Also, people were immediately just doing some big stuff with generative AI, already building applications, custom GPTs, etc. And that all felt a little intimidating. So with my husband's support, I think what I did was really start small in terms of, I remember there were times when, I probably did not even have the energy to switch on the TV, but he would come in and switch on an Andrew Ng video on teaching generative AI versus, the 100th Indian movie that I would be actually watching. So it was a good kind of like deflection to where I needed to be. So starting small is actually really important in terms of getting off the bench. What I also learned from Serena's false starts was how she turned all of those into learnings in terms of really believing in herself. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out for me. One of her quotes really resonated with me, which is, "You have to believe in yourself when no one else does." And this was so key in terms of when I was in that position, having that lack of institutional knowledge, wanting to be able to get off the bench, to really believe that I could do this. The other thing on top of that is also the part of community that I spoke about. So I remember, going to this local Gen AI meetup, and I went with like a walker, and they were shocked. And they were shocked, but I also had a lot of empathy from them. And I still, in that meetup, there are 3 people who support me, from that meetup. One of them sends me the latest newsletter updates. One of them sends me any research or report that actually just came out. She sends me that too. And another one is my accountability partner for checking out one new Gen AI product every week. So I think without that mindset of adopting a beginner's mindset, starting small, learning from your failures, and building your own set of small community, I don't think I would have gotten off the bench, but I was able to. But most importantly, it's believing in yourself that you can do it. So today, I encourage all of you to get off the bench today. If you do nothing else today, take a picture of this slide, follow the resources that I've actually put up here. There are some online courses, there are some people that I would love for you to follow, and pick up an LLM. You have a choice of LLMs right now. Pick one up, tinker with it, say refine an email, because you learn by doing, and that's the beauty of generative AI, which is it's a natural language. So again, if you're doing nothing today, I encourage you to come off the bench and do any subset of these resources for you to come off the bench. Okay, the second part of the framework, if you remember, is getting your first win. Who remembers who this athlete is? Faith Kipyegon, who is the Kenyan athlete, who is the triple Olympic athlete, with a never-before-done Olympic record of 3 Olympic gold medals in the last 3 Olympics. This is actually a very rare picture of her running the Kenyan junior girls, barefoot, and she actually won it. Talk about obstacles and getting your first win. And that's the thing with obstacles and failures. They're all around us. And hey, did I tell you that most AI experiments fail? So you've heard that before. So the key question in terms of getting your first win is it's so important to know what can those failures teach you. And this is really important for this because getting your first win is going to be a series of potentially, could be a series of potential failures. And in this, I take a lot of inspiration in basketball from Michael Jordan, who, after a series of 5 NBA losses to Detroit Pistons in 1991, won their first NBA win. So, he has this amazing quote. He says, I had to fail again and again and again to then succeed. And he says, to win, you must first learn how to fail. At Fanatics, we had this audacious goal of using generative AI to produce high quality content, product content for our websites. It was a big goal. We had all of our KPIs aligned on it. We started off with the first experiment. And I think failure would be a weak word for this. I should probably think of how badly it failed. What happened was it was a test site that actually went live with real transactions. It wasn't the kind of brand voice that we needed. There were hallucinations, so there were improper content, etc. And most importantly, I don't think all the teams were fully aligned. Through this conference, I've had conversations with many of you, and many of you have told me that how frustrating it is for you that your company is not sponsoring, more AI and generative AI work. I understand. I empathize with it. Here is another point of view, though. Think of somebody like me who has to sign a budget for an AI or a generative AI experiment. It is an unproven technology. Most of the experiments are going to fail, and we're not sure how long this is going to take before it's actually going to yield the results. How are we going to come together to be able to, sign the budget for this? So if you look at both sides of the coin, I think what is important, and I think what I learned through the process of iterating through that at Fanatics, is one, we had to go beyond the metrics. Again, as Archana mentioned, being data informed versus data driven. So we had to take our KPIs aside and say, what we're going to learn from this, what are we going to learn from this? And what we learned from this is something unique about our customers, our market, our business, and also more importantly, our own operations. We learned that customers actually like to see a default page of their jersey in their favorite color. That actually struck a really big chord with them. And if you showed them in their favorite color, then the chances of conversion is very high. We also learned a ton about our own internal operations. What is the timing that we should actually launch these? What kind of resources we should have had to be able to reduce the confabulations and hallucinations? What kind of process we need to put in place to be able to ensure that all the stakeholders are actually aligned and aware of this initiative? So we learned a lot from failing repeatedly. And I think my contribution to this iteration at Fanatics, where we ultimately were able to get to a proper functioning website with high quality product content. In fact, right now, almost 1/3 of most Fanatics sites are actually generative AI developed. And it was the genesis was that experimentation that we actually did. And I think it was important to understand my role in what that framework actually had. And this is the community aspect of it. And I realized that my role was more of a mentor, a coach, a person who would create that environment for that team to fail, and most importantly, would actually possibly lessen the pressure a little bit to be able to focus more on the learning from a customer, from a business, and from a market standpoint. And every time we iterated, we learned, we did better. And it was definitely about a 3 to 4 month journey before when we actually failed the first experiment to be able to really get to a place where it was production ready website with conversion. And the key thing in this, as Michael Jordan mentioned, was to not give up and to keep learning down the way. So, it's interesting when he talks about learning how to fail, right? I mean, my framework for learning how to fail was pretty simple before. You fail, you acknowledge it, you feel sad about this a little bit, and then you pick yourself up and you go. But I think there is a little bit more nuanced now. And I want to now leave you with a framework for how to fail well. It's basically 4 steps. The first thing, accept the outcome. Don't sugarcoat it for yourself or for the team. The second is document your wins and your learnings. I tell my team, there are no failures, there are no mistakes. It's all learning. So this part is actually important to institutionalize this across the board. The third is, while doing this, maintaining compassion, giving yourself grace and perspective. And the fourth is simply coming back up and setting a new goal for your next iteration and being ready to have that be done all over again. I can guarantee you, when you go through this cycle a few times, every time your level of context and understanding improves, and it's only a matter of time before you get your first win, just like what we did at Fanatics. So the third, and this is my favorite part, is playing the long game, meaning playing to where it is going to be. I asked myself a ton of questions in terms of what I would come here and speak about when playing the long game. Because again, if you think about it, there are so many challenges to playing the long game. Do we have it in ourselves? What do I have to sacrifice or trade off to be able to continue to play the long game? But I think the most important thing that came to me was, what is this long game? What is this future that we are imagining? And importantly, how do I prepare for this future, and how do I play this long game? And this was important for me as I was building my portfolio work, my AI and generative AI work, because I wanted to build high quality AI and generative AI work. I want it to be, I want to work with inspirational and great founders that I can learn from. And so there were a few things for me that actually mattered. But more importantly, I think what I needed to do is also develop a sense of where I think generative AI would be in the future. What is that long game? And so let me let you in on my vision of where AI and generative AI will be. We will live in a multi-sapient, multi-planetary, multi-agentic world, and we will coexist as humans with AI-first machines, tools, and agents on a daily basis. Let's sit with that for a few seconds. And I encourage you to develop your own vision of AI and generative AI with this framework. It should be a little scary. It should seem impossible. It should almost feel a little wrong. But that's where we're pushing ourselves. So when we have such a big, audacious vision, and when I sat down and kind of developed this because I wanted to know where this will be and what I'm playing against, you would understand that this needs some strong reinforcements, right? So let's call in a great athlete to give us some reinforcements to play the strong game. And who better than Switzerland's own Roger Federer? Did I tell you that we are a tennis family, by the way? So my husband is an atheist, but he worships Federer. So in his own words, it's possible to be an atheist and have a god. My son is obsessed with Roger Federer, watches YouTube videos of him a lot, and both father and son are dissecting the play. And what I find fascinating about Federer's career are a few things. One, just sustaining a career for such a long period of time, winning 20 Grand Slams, is a superhuman feat. But what I find really fascinating through the books that I read and some of the matches and games that I was privileged enough to see, mostly thanks to the boys in the house who drag me to it sometimes, is how effortless it seems. And most importantly, without any major injury through his career. And what I learned is that actually, Federer trains with track and field coaches and athletes, learns how to move his body in different ways, and learns how to complete points quickly. So the less time he spends on the court, and if you add that up over games and matches and over a career of 20 years, he's actually being super efficient about that. That was fascinating to me as a way to kind of like play that long game. So what did I learn from that? Again, my vision and the long game of what I want to play to this vision of this multi-agentic, multi-sapient, multi-planetary world is I want to develop a portfolio career of work of high-quality AI and generative AI work, 80% of which is paid, and working with founders that, again, are developing cutting-edge technologies or want to transform their businesses with cutting-edge technologies, who are able to inspire me, and I'm able to learn back from them. This was my long shot of what I was playing for. So for me in this, it was extremely important to develop a flexible mindset. Just like, thinking about training with track and field athletes to be able to improve your game or flexibility in a different way, I had to actually learn many things in many new different ways to be able to really understand how to build that portfolio career. So I spoke to many people outside of technology to be able to understand how they've built careers over long periods of time to be able to sustain this, for years or decades, if you may. The second thing that I learned from Federer's, work and life is managing your energy. Not as product managers, we're experts at managing our calendars, right? But managing our energy is actually far more important. And what this means is knowing your energy map, knowing what times of the day gives you energy, knowing what rituals give you energy, and being able to actually do those consistently over a period of time. So thank you, Rafael, for having me as the afternoon keynote, because I'm not a morning person. The second thing, the third thing, sorry, is knowing your superpowers. We all have superpowers. It's for us to discover and know this. And when we play to our superpowers, we actually expend less energy and it becomes more joyful. Again, a key Federer trait that I learned in terms of playing to his forehand, playing to his serve, finishing the points quickly. Gosh, I would love to spend less time working too, right? In a way, in terms of being more efficient at all of this. And continuously strengthen your learning mindset. I cannot underscore the importance in playing the long game for the importance of community. Finding your community. We're all here as part of a community, as part of PMF. You've met so many people now. I think Lulia mentioned 5 people that you should meet, right, Lulia? So hopefully you're all on that in terms of achieving that. There's still happy hour after this if you're short on those numbers. But this is a community. And find your community. Help your community, support your community. And I cannot, again, underscore the importance of this. I could not play the long game alone. I could only do this with the support of my community. And I have 3 communities that actually help me in this. My son's school, my sidebar group, and a product leader summit, another professional community of product leaders with a fall conference in the Bay Area, where I actually conduct and design their speaker series, which brings speakers together, and we do small group networking on a weekly basis. So this is my way of giving back to my community. So let's recap. 3x3 framework to help you become an AI and a generative AI champion with a champion's mindset. Get off the bench, get your first win, play the long game, adapt creatively, learn from failure, and build your community. So let's take the poll again. How many of you now are motivated to create your plan for AI and generative AI for yourself, for your life, personally and professionally? Raise your hand if you're at an 8+. Yes, we have more. We have at least 2 times more number of people. Congratulations to all of you. And next time you are in an AI pickle, ask yourself, what would a champion do? What would you do? Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.